TUTAMÉIA está ao vivo, transmitindo diretamente dos nossos estúdios domésticos com a Eleonora.
O Rodolfo.
E a gente vai apresentar para vocês agora uma entrevista que acabamos de fazer com um professor da Universidade de Teerã, no Irã, contando em que ele conta o que aconteceu no país nessa madrugada e como está a situação agora, e faz uma análise da situação política e militar na região e no mundo, né? O que tu pode nos contar mais sobre o nosso entrevistado, Eleonora?
Foad Izadi é professor associado da Faculdade de Estudos Internacionais da Universidade de Teerã, nos falou agorinha, agora lá são 5h30, né?
São 6h30,
6 horas de diferença, então já está se encaminhando para o fim da tarde. Ele deu aula normalmente, vida normal em Teerã, e ele dá esse contexto todo do ataque, que atingiu alvos militares, e logo após a reunião dos Brics, pouco menos de 10 dias das eleições nos Estados Unidos, ele fala da resistência que se forma contra os ataques de Israel. Ele lembra, né, a história do Irã e a história desses ataques que foram repudiados por muitos países, especialmente, estou lembrando aqui da Turquia, o ministro das Relações Exteriores declarou hoje cedo, falou do genocídio de Israel e disse: agora está claro que colocar um fim ao terror israelense na região se tornou uma tarefa histórica para garantir a segurança e a paz internacionais. Então, vamos assistir a entrevista do professor Foad Izadi e conta, né, o que ele viu, o que ele sentiu nessa madrugada e os desdobramentos possíveis para a região, para o mundo.
Repetindo, a entrevista é quase ao vivo, porque a gente acabou de fazer essa gravação, tivemos que gravar basicamente por questões técnicas para garantir a qualidade da conexão e trazer para você a melhor informação possível. Então, vamos lá, aqui com a gravação da entrevista com o professor Izadi.
Foad Izadi. What's happening today? It's a Saturday in the middle of afternoon in Teerã. What can you tell us about what's going on in Teerã?
Well, things are normal. People are going around their business. I had classes today at the University of Tehran. Students came. My children went to school this morning. They returned. Everything is very much normal. What is not normal is what happened last night. Israelis attacked Iran again. They attacked Iran once. The Iranian embassy in Damascus was attacked. We had a general who was visiting the embassy, Iranian general, was killed. A number of other people were killed. That was the first Israeli attack. The second Israeli attack was in October. They killed Ismail Haniyeh, who was a guest of the Iranian president. He was in Tehran for the inauguration of the Iranian president. That was the second attack. And then we had the third attack last night. Before these three attacks, Iran experienced terrorism from Israel. Israelis have killed Iranian scientists. They have sabotaged Iranian factories. So we have a genocidal regime in this part of the world. The good news is that in Latin America, you don't have any genocidal regimes. So you're living in peace, relative peace. But in the Middle East, we are facing the threat of a war. As you know, in Palestine, Israelis have killed more than 43,000 people. In Lebanon, they have killed more than 3,000 people. They want to repeat the same experience in Iran if they could.
So, have you heard any answer. What have the Iranian authorities said about this Israeli attack?
They said that we have lost 2 army soldiers, two Iranian soldiers in the attacks last night. So we have had casualties. They had hit some military sites in Iran.
When it talks about retaliation,
under Article 51 of the UN Charter, if a country is attacked, they have the right to respond. So Iran has the right to respond. Like the last 2 times, Iran responded to the Israeli attacks using ballistic missiles. Iran has that option. Iran does not want to fight with Israel or United States or any other country. So I think Iranian leaders are debating what Iran's response should be. The fact that Iran has the right to respond to a foreign attack is, I think, reserved. What type of attack Iran will manage to do in response is something that we have to wait and see.
Can you evaluate what is the goal of Israel with this attack? I mean, Israel has been bombing Gaza, destroying Gaza, attacking Lebanon, and now expands to these attacks to Iran. Do you think it wants to escalate the conflict to make it a regional conflict, maybe even broader?
I think the first goal of Israelis is to solidify the occupation of Palestinian lands. They have been occupying Palestine for the last 76 years, and they want to continue that occupation. And since they want to continue that occupation, they don't like countries that are helping Palestinians. And Iran has been proud since 1979, since the victory of Islamic Revolution. Iran has been a supporter of the Palestinian cause. So they don't like Iran. And they think that if they can stop Iran's help for the Palestinians, they can close that portfolio once and for all. So that's the main problem they have with Iran. And they want to escalate under their own time frame. They initially started the genocide in Gaza. Then after about 11 months, they waited 11 months, and then started their attacks, heavy attacks on Lebanon. They may wait 1 more year to repeat what they did in Gaza and in Lebanon towards Iran. We don't know. But I think the Netanyahu regime is interested in war. He would go to jail if he stops the war because of his violation of Israeli law. So they want to continue the war. And a lot of people make money. American weapons manufacturers have made billions of dollars in the last year, giving Israelis bombs to drop, at the schools, at places of worship, at people's houses. So I think the Israelis want to continue the genocide and repeat the experience of Gaza in other places. They want to have a total domination in this part of the world, and this is a problem. And they have the backing of the United States. They get all the money they want from the United States. So this is an American-Israeli problem that we have here.
But is it possible? I mean, there will be resistance. There is resistance. There will be resistance. The Chancellor of Turkey just today said that the Israeli has a terror regime, and that you have to stop. The only way to get peace in the region is to stop the terror of Israel. So what do you make of that?
I agree. As long as, and they used to do terrorism in the past. Now they do genocide. which is a bigger crime than terrorism. The Israeli state started in 1948 with terrorism. They have 76 years of practice with terrorism. And they have moved to killing women and children on a daily basis. And as long as you have a genocidal regime in the area that you live, you will not have peace. As long as we have this regime in this part of the world, I think peace will not come. Ending this apartheid state is not very difficult. You know, Western governments that are supporting Israel say that they like democracy. If they like democracy, they should give the ability to vote to Palestinians. All the people who live in that part of the world should be able to vote for their government. And if they do that, you're not going to have Netanyahu as prime minister. You're going to have someone who has the support of the Palestinians as well. And that is called one-state solution. This is what Iran has been asking for the last 30 years, that let the people vote and then accept whatever government that comes out of that voting process. This is what happened in South Africa. South Africa was an apartheid state. Blacks didn't have the right to vote. Once they had the right to vote, they elected Nelson Mandela. So we need to repeat that South African experience in Palestine. And the only way to do that is through democracy. This is going to be the task of all people all around the world, to put pressure on Israel to accept democracy and let the Palestinians vote.
So you mentioned South Africa. At that time, South Africa was isolated from all countries. Even the United States condemned the apartheid state at that time. Here we have the United States supporting Israel. What's the path to isolate Israel more and have the international community forcing Israel to commit to the real democracy, as you just said?
You know, initially, both the United States and UK supported apartheid. In fact, Israelis also were a big partner of the apartheid state in South Africa. They had extensive relations with the apartheid government in South Africa. In fact, Iran had extensive relations with South Africa before the revolution. Before 1979, the apartheid government in South Africa was getting all of its oil from Iran. And after the revolution, the new revolutionary government in Iran stopped the oil sale to South Africa, kicked out the Israeli ambassador, gave the building of the Israeli embassy to Yasser Arafat, to the Palestinians. So if in the case of South Africa, you could make United States move away from South African government, I think we need to do the same. And you see all these demonstrations at American universities. There are huge gatherings in the United States asking the US government to stop their support of an apartheid state. And I think sooner or later, you will see the repeat of what you saw in South Africa. You look at public opinion polls, most of the young people in the United States support the Palestinian cause. So sooner or later, these young people will become older. These people and their children will change the direction of the US foreign policy.
What can you tell us about the context of this attacks? The Brics have just reunion a few days ago in Kazan, and there is a U.S. election just 10 days from now. How does it influence this attack? What can Brics make about this attack? And what's the influence of the American election on Israel?
You know, the unfortunate thing is that both the Republicans and Democrats support the apartheid state. This is a sad fact. So I think in the next 4 years, you will see a repeat of what the Americans have been doing. What I said about the reduction of American support is going to be a long-term process. It's not going to come in the short time period. With regard to the Brics gathering in Russia, I think people all around the world see two sets of values. One set belongs to Brics, countries cooperating, whether they're in Latin America or Asia or Africa, countries cooperating with each other, having trade, having good relations. That's one model, the Brics model. The other model is the American model, that they engage in genocide, they kill civilians on a daily basis, they export a lot of arms to genocidal governments and dictatorships, they impose coups, they oppose popular governments. That's another model we have in the world. So we have the Brics model and the American model. And I think ordinary people all around the world realize which model is the better model when you compare the two.
Just let's go back to what is happening or in Teerã now or during the night. Could you expand a little bit about what when the rockets exploded? What happened in Teerã? It was near your house. People came to the streets. What happened when the explosions occurred?
You know, we didn't hear anything. It was, I think, in the outskirts of Tehran. We live in the middle of the city. Tehran is a big city. It has a population of 15 million people. So we didn't hear anything. I was awakened by a call from international media. This was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And then while I was on Al Jazeera, English Al Jazeera, I heard Iranian air defense systems working. I could hear that. So nothing really happened in Tehran. There were some places that were hit. And as I said, we had 2 army officers that were killed last night. So there were some damage, there were some casualties. But in Tehran, today looked very much like what you saw yesterday. So you didn't have any effect. You know, Iranians have this culture of resistance. They have been resisting American sanctions. They have been resisting American aggression. When they compare their situation with Gaza, with Lebanon, they're not getting killed on a daily basis. So they feel empathy towards those people, and they are obviously in a much better shape. So people went around the city as they did normally.
And any message of solidarity of the international community?
You know, we have a lot of friends. Personally, I have a lot of friends, so we got a lot of messages of solidarity, of asking me how I was doing. So we have this network of people who don't like imperialism, don't like genocide, don't like Zionism, all around the world. And this is a united front. This is, I think, 99% of the world population. You have a tiny, tiny minority that becomes happy when they see bombs drop on people's houses in Gaza. That number is not very large. You have maybe a couple of million people in occupied Palestine, and you have a few hundred people in Western governments that feel happy when they see genocide. Normal people don't like to see genocide. And so I think we are leading a movement against a colonial state. Israel is a colonial project. It's a colonial settler state, and most people who have experience with imperialism and colonialism are really sick of what they see on their television every day.
You just mentioned earlier the revolution of 1979 that just completed 45 years. What can you tell us about this history of the revolution till today? What's the experience of revolution till this day in the Iranian population?
You know, the government before the revolution was very corrupt, and we had a dictator, the Shah. He was supported by the United States. He came into power in 1953 through an American coup d'etat, and he stayed in power with the help of the United States until 1979. He plundered Iran's resources. Iran became a client state of the United States, and he was engaging in activities that was quite upsetting to Iranians. Not only he was oppressing Iranians, he was helping Israelis. He was in the service of Israelis and Americans. So there was a popular revolution, and people came to the streets and overthrew him. The Americans obviously didn't like that, so they started having sanctions against Iran. For the last 45 years, they continue those hostile policies. I suggest you read Iran's constitution. It's available online. It was written in 1979. It's a very progressive constitution. Is very much concerned about social justice issues. At University of Tehran, you know, it's a state university. It's free for people who do well on entrance exams, and 60% of our students are female. So in the last 45 years, we had a lot of female students getting an education. If you look at the UN data, Human Development Index, Iran is #1 in the world in terms of growth in the last 45 years. So you look at the average age in 1979, it was about 53. Now it's about 79. So you had a huge jump in average age. That means better medicine, more doctors, better healthcare, better food. So Iranian government has been working hard to make sure that the atrocities that Iranians experienced before the revolution is addressed. And this is one of the reasons the Americans don't like American government. They don't like Iran's government because they like dictatorships. They want to control other people's resources, and they don't like Iran because they're not able to do that in Iran.
And what can you tell us about the situation of Hezbollah and Hamas that will be attacked by Israel so much?
You know, these are resistance movements. Hezbollah was created after the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982. So this is not the first time that Israelis are attacking their neighbor. They did that in 1982. They came all the way up to Beirut. They occupied Lebanon all the way to the capital. And after that invasion, they had young Lebanese that wanted to force the occupation forces out of their country. They formed a group and they called it Hezbollah. So it's a resistance movement. They started fighting the occupation force in 1985, 3 years after the start of the occupation. They fought the Israeli army for 15 years. And in 2000, they managed to kick Israelis out of Lebanon. It took them 15 years of fighting to do that. The same thing is true with Hamas. You know, more than 30 years ago, we had the Oslo Agreement. Everybody who was at that time present, whether it was the Palestine PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, Arab governments, they agreed to an agreement to divide the land in in Palestine, and the Israelis refused to do their part of the agreement. They refused to follow the Oslo Agreement. They continued their apartheid state. They put a lot of pressure on Palestinians, and that is how Hamas was created. Hamas, these are young Palestinians who wanted to liberate their land. You know, Yahya Sinwar, who was killed just last week in Gaza, was a young man in the 1980s. He spent more than 20 years at Israeli jails because he didn't want his country to be occupied by the Israelis. So it is, you know, they have been engaging in genocide for the last year, and Hamas continues to live even after the death of its leaders. And the reason is that you made a country, you know, you can eliminate an organization, but you cannot eliminate a nation. And it's not possible to eliminate the Palestinians. They have shown a lot of resistance. You know, another option they had was to leave. After all these bombardments, they could leave, but they don't want to leave their land because they remember what happened to their parents. You know, a lot of people who are living in Gaza, they were forced to live there. They are refugees. And that was not a good experience. So Palestinians that live in Gaza don't want to become refugees again. So overall, we are facing a lot of difficulties in this part of the world. The fact that people in Brazil are interested on this topic is a good sign. It is a sign that humanity still lives. And with the support of the people in Latin America, you know, Latin America has a history of resisting imperialism. It's a shared history of resisting imperialism. So with that shared history, with that solidarity, I think putting pressure, public opinion pressure on the United States and Israel is going to eventually lead to the liberation of Palestine.
Yeah, talking about the Palestine resistance, some say that this is a war that Israel can't win because there will always be resistance. What do you think of that?
I agree. You know, you have millions of Palestinians living on their land, and you cannot kill them all. You can kill 40,000, 50,000, but you cannot kill them all. You cannot force them out. Sooner or later, Israelis will realize that this policy of genocide is not going to lead into any success. They can destroy buildings. Yes, they have destroyed most of buildings in Gaza. They have killed a lot of women and children. Yes, they have done that. But whether they can win this war, achieve the goals that they said they would achieve, that's not going to be possible.
What can you tell us about the role of, you just mentioned Brics, what's the role of Russia and especially China in this conflict? Can they have a role in stop Israel and to create this isolation of Israel? China, Russia, what can they do about it, this issue?
You know, they are doing some good work at the United Nations, good statements criticizing Israel, criticizing US. You know, the UN system gives the United States a veto power. So no matter how much they work, at the end of the day, the resolutions face difficulties because of that veto power. So they have done some good work, political good work at the UN. You know, China gets about 60% of its energy from this part of the world, from the Middle East. So China's dependence on Middle Eastern energy is extensive. The hope that people in Iran and in other countries had was for China to play a more active role. Both China and Russia, I think, could do more than engaging in political statements. And we haven't seen that yet. There are some help that is there, but it could be much more extensive. You know, I think if you want to leave this problem to the United States to solve, they're not going to solve it because the United States is part of the problem. They're not going to be able to do anything to remedy all these atrocities. I think other countries should come forward and do more, and that is what's missing.
You mentioned the United States veto power in the decisions of the United Nations, but despite of that, United Nations has established some decisions about Israel, condemning Israel, and telling that it has to at least have a ceasefire there. How the international community can enforce these resolutions? If
it's not very. It is not very difficult. With the UN Charter, you pass a resolution. You ask a country to stop genocide, for example. And if they don't do that, then under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, you can use force against the country that's engaging in illegal activities. The problem that this doesn't happen is because of the United States, because the US, they vetoed the ceasefire agreement 3 times, and then the last one, the ceasefire resolution, they vetoed. And then the last one, they abstained. So the resolution was passed. But if you want to, since the Israelis did not do the resolution, did not accept the resolution, then the next stage would be putting Israel under Chapter 7, and that's not going to happen because of the US veto. And every day for the last several days, Israelis are attacking UN soldiers that come from different countries. Most of them come actually from Italy. The UN soldiers that are based in southern Lebanon are under attack. They have banned Mr. Guterres, the UN Secretary General, to enter occupied territories. The Israelis are on a rampage. They are killing civilians on a daily basis. They're attacking UN soldiers. They're attacking Iran. This is very difficult, all with the help of the United States.
How about the BDS movement that intends to disinvest and to make sanctions functions towards Israel? That happened in South Africa. Why it's so difficult to impose sanctions to Israel?
BDS movement has been doing a good job. They have been educating a lot of people all around the world, especially in Western countries. And one reason you see these students at American college campuses demonstrating for Palestine is because of many years of hard work by organizations that do BDS type of work. So the reason they have difficulties is because of the US government. If you want to sanction Israel, this is what the students are asking, for their universities not to invest in Israel. And these students have been expelled. They have been shot at. They are not allowed to go back to the university. There have been some professors that have been expelled. So the United States becomes a police state when it comes to the issue of Palestine. If you talk about Palestine, in the US is going to act like the most brutal dictatorship and suppress people. And this is not only true in US, even in countries like Canada that used to talk about freedom of expression. I had a friend on a webinar. She was telling us, she lives in Vancouver. She was telling us that they had a pro-Palestinian demonstration. They were present there. They were arrested by the Canadian police, and they were released after they signed an agreement saying that they will not participate in pro-Palestinian demonstrations. Two of the demonstrators had a flag of Hezbollah, and they're still in jail.
Same happens in Europe. I mean, in Germany, Germany expelled professors that will participate in a demonstration. A British professor, and the German police arrested a guy that was wearing a T-shirt with a Palestine symbol. So what does this tell about democracy in Germany or in Europe? Or is democracy a very cloudy value?
Well, if you want to be pro-Palestinian, you should come to Iran. If you go to Europe or United States, you'll go to jail probably or face difficulties. This is hypocrisy, and unfortunately, we have this Israeli lobby in these countries that are putting pressure on governments and non-governmental organizations. If the general public in these Western countries realize what's going on in Palestine, they would be very upset. So the only way they can stop this news flow, information flow, is to suppress it and suppress people who want to engage in demonstrations, people who want to engage in propagating the truth about Palestine. Otherwise, you would have a public that would realize what has happened, and that would be the end of Zionism.
You mentioned before the special targeted attacks of Israel against United Nations personnel in Palestine, but they also have another special target, which are the press people. I mean, more than 150 or more than 170 journalists have been killed in Palestine and now also in Lebanon. What do you make of that? Is that clearly they are clearly being targeted by Israel, and why is that?
This is the same practice that they did in Gaza. They started with hospitals. They started hitting hospitals, and then they started hitting news organizations. Last week, they were hitting hospitals in Lebanon. Yesterday, they started killing a journalist. The reason they don't like hospitals is because when they want to kill people, assassinate people, they don't want them to get well. They want them to die. So that's why you shouldn't have hospitals in your country, because that's not fulfilling that purpose. And the reason they don't like journalists is because they don't want these stories to be told internationally. And that's why journalists have to be killed, because if they're present, they will report, and then more people will realize that we are facing a genocidal regime. So that's why they're the target.
In your vision, this attack on Iran seems to be a escalation of the war. You mentioned that in the beginning, but what people in Iran are afraid of a war, a wide war. What do you think about that?
Iranians don't like war. If you look at the Iranian history, last time Iran attacked a country was more than 200 years ago. So in the last 200 years, Iranian government has been very peaceful. Iran experienced 8 years of war with Iraq during Saddam Hussein. Iraq was the country that attacked Iran under the direction of the United States. So Iranians obviously don't want to be fighting anyone, but at the same time, they realize that if they don't defend their country, they will end up like Palestine. This is what happened to Palestinians. They don't want to be occupied by the Israelis or Americans. They don't want to see in Iran what happened in Afghanistan and in Iraq. You know, both countries were invaded by the Americans. So a lot of people here realize that the only way to have peace is to resist. So there is this culture of resistance against imperialism and Zionism.
So we'd like to thank you very much for this interview. But before saying goodbye, I'd like to have your message to the Brazilian people.
You know, I've been to Venezuela several times. I've been to Ecuador. I've not been to Brazil, but what I know from Latin America is that in Latin America there is also this culture of anti-imperialism, no matter which country you belong to. So that spirit of anti-imperialism, that spirit of resistance, is part of the Latin American culture. The relationship between Iran and Brazil is quite good. Iran is buying a lot of goods from Brazil and exporting some goods to Brazil. So I think one way to resist outside pressures is for South-South relations, for countries in the South to work with each other more. I think that could be done through organizations like Brics, and it could be done through bilateral organizations. Knowing about the history of this part of the world is going to be important, because you have a lot of propaganda against Iran. I'm sure there are Brazilian television stations that are saying bad things about Iran as we speak. So hearing about Iran from Iranians is going to be a good idea, and I think this is what you have done. So thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so much.
Thank
you.
you.
Very nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Same here. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bom, essa foi, então, a entrevista que fizemos há pouco, há menos de uma hora, diretamente falando com o professor Foad Izadi, que é um professor da Faculdade de Assuntos Internacionais da Universidade de Teerã. Ele foi acordado nessa madrugada, não pelos estrondos, mas pelas ligações da mídia internacional que buscavam comentários dele sobre os ataques de Israel a Teerã. Ao longo do dia de hoje, ele deu suas aulas na universidade normalmente, seus filhos foram para a escola, e no meio da tarde em Teerã, a diferença de horário de fuso de 6 horas e meia, no meio da tarde em Teerã, ele nos deu essa entrevista que você acabou de acompanhar. Eu acho que a grande, talvez toda ela, ele traz muita informação, tanto sobre a situação de Teerã, como sobre a resistência, sobre mas talvez a grande mensagem aí é o seguinte: o único jeito de haver paz é a resistência, é resistir aos ataques de Israel e do imperialismo.
É uma entrevista que é recheada de história, né? História da resistência, a Revolução Iraniana de 79. Ele fala sobre a fundação do Hezbollah, do Hamas, e de toda a resistência, né, que existe naquela região contra as ações de Israel, sempre apoiadas, mais do que apoiadas pelos Estados Unidos. Ele fala sobre a situação da Palestina, né, e fala sobre a importância dos Brics e do Sul global de apoiarem um modelo divergente, diferente do que é imposto pelos Estados Unidos em grandes parcelas do mundo.
E comenta também o que a gente pode falar de bloqueio da mídia e mesmo da academia, dos centros de conhecimento, sobre o que os países daquela região, notadamente o Irã. E aí, como a Leonora falou, ao comentar os resultados da Revolução Iraniana, ele cita, por exemplo, que mais de 60% da população universitária, dos alunos universitários, são mulheres. Fala também do índice de desenvolvimento humano do país e das taxas de crescimento, das enormes taxas de crescimento do país nesse período, desde a Revolução. Recomendo ainda, e acho que está disponível na internet, a gente vai seguir essa sugestão dele, que se veja, que se busque ver a Constituição do Irã, que pode dar uma ideia mais precisa do que é o país, do que o país deseja para o seu povo e do ponto de vista político, do que títulos como a gente está vendo hoje na mídia brasileira, né, que reduz o país ao que ele não é.
Então, rememorando, né, ontem Israel lançou ataques sobre a região metropolitana de Teerã, ataques a instalações militares. O Irã anunciou a morte de 2 soldados, e a escalada de Israel na região cresce. O ataque foi condenado por boa parte dos países, né? E, então, enfim, mais informações, você volta aqui e nos assiste aqui no TUTAMÉIA. A gente tem um convite para você se inscrever no nosso canal aqui no YouTube e seguir a gente nas redes sociais.
Legal. Então,
obrigada, pessoal.
Obrigado, pessoal. Tchau, até mais.
Até mais.
Bom fim de semana.